Welcome to another World History 2 topic walkthrough, brought to you by Mr. Michael, Social Studies teacher. This video is here to help you fill out your lecture notes, understand the big ideas, and maybe even laugh once or twice. So grab your notes and let's get started.
Welcome to the chaos that changed everything. Yep, we're talking factories, smokestacks, and a whole lot of child labor. Today, we're diving into the wild side of the Industrial Revolution. The effects. Think. Cities exploding with people, jobs that paid more but wrecked your health, and working conditions that would have had your parents calling the school board. Buckle up. This unit gets grimy fast. All right, here's the game plan. We're diving into how rapid industrial growth totally flipped cities, jobs, and daily life, not just in Europe, but eventually worldwide. Think, factories replacing farms, workers crammed into grimy apartments, and major glow-ups and glow-downs in society. We'll unpack how all this factory madness didn't just change what people did for work, it rewired entire class systems. Yep, the Industrial Revolution didn't just build machines, it built a whole new world. Let's take a quick trip across Europe. No passport needed. This map from 1870 shows the industrial glow-up happening all over the continent. The darker the dots, the heavier the industrial flex. Notice how the United Kingdom is absolutely stacked with industry, especially in places like Manchester and Liverpool. It was basically the original TikTok trendsetter for industrialization. Textile hubs, coal mining spots, steel production, it's all here. France, Germany, and Belgium are coming in hot too, trying to catch up to Britain's head start. And spoiler alert, wherever those factories popped up, so did problems like pollution, overcrowding, and child workers with zero breaks. This map is your sneak peek into the industrial boom and the chaos it left behind. Next, we'll zoom in on how this factory takeover changed everyday life. Here's where things get messy. Once factories started handing out paychecks that beat farm work, people left the countryside faster than a senior on the last day of school. That's called urbanization, when everyone rushes into cities looking for work, and boom, population explosion. And with all those new workers, factories got cheap labor and tons of customers. Win-win, right? Well, not exactly. The cities got hit hard. Imagine pollution choking the air, rivers turning into sludge smoothies, and garbage piling up like it's a group project no one wants to finish. There was zero health codes, no building regulations, and definitely no TikTok breaks. Rich merchants dipped out to the suburbs while workers were left packed into sketchy, crowded tenements with no Wi-Fi. I mean, no plumbing. All right, time to talk about what it was actually like working in these factories. Spoiler, it's not exactly a dream job. Factory work during the Industrial Revolution was no joke. Most workers were on the grind 14 hours a day, 6 days a week, all year long. No weekends, no vacation, just non-stop noise, smoke, and stress. And it gets worse. Coal miners, breathing in nasty coal dust that slowly wrecked their lungs. Some didn't live past 30. Factory workers, constantly dodging belts, gears, and steam-powered death traps. No safety goggles, no oops my bad policies. If your hand got caught in the machine, well, you probably weren't working the next day or ever again. And kids? Yeah, children as young as 6 years old were crawling under machines to fix threads while they were still running. One wrong move, and boom, fingers crushed, arms torn, or worse. Some kids were used because they were small enough to fit between tight spaces. Cute in theory, terrifying in real life. Now that you've survived that mental image, let's zoom out and look at how all this affected different social classes, because not everyone suffered equally. The Industrial Revolution didn't just shake up cities, it flipped the social pyramid too. A new middle class started rising. Skilled workers, merchants, wealthy farmers, and professionals like doctors and lawyers. These folks had steady jobs, decent homes, and just enough clout to start changing British society from the inside. Still, the old-school landowning aristocrats looked down on them like, "Congrats on your factory. Now go sit at the kids' table." Meanwhile, the working class was getting crushed. They worked the hardest, lived in the worst conditions, and then got replaced by machines. Imagine training for a job, then watching a hunk of metal do it faster and cheaper. Unemployment spiked, desperation hit, riots broke out, and while some families were sipping tea in velvet lounges, others were sharing one room and one bathroom with 10 people. These tensions didn't stay quiet for long, because eventually, workers started fighting back. But first, let's highlight the rare upsides of all this chaos. Not everything about the Industrial Revolution was smoke and suffering. Over time, it actually sparked some major wins. First off, it created jobs, a lot of them. Nations got richer, tech advanced, and industries boomed. Education improved, clothes got cheaper, diets and housing started leveling up too, unless you were still stuck next to a coal plant, in which case, not so much. And here's the glow-up. Workers eventually organized, stood up for themselves, and scored better hours, higher wages, and safer conditions. Took a while, but they got there. In the long run, the impact still shows today. Living and working conditions, way better than in 1850. Plus, governments started using tax money, aka revenue, to build schools, roads, sewer systems, and all the things cities needed but didn't have, back when people were just winging it with chamber pots and candlelight. But Britain wasn't about to keep the industrial spotlight forever. Across the Atlantic, the United States was ready to enter its factory era. And spoiler alert, it involved war, smuggling, and a whole lot of teenage girls powering up the textile industry. Across the pond, the US was having a fine, I'll-do-it-myself moment. When the British blockaded American ports during the War of 1812, it forced the US to build its own industries, especially textiles. And that's where things really started spinning. Enter Samuel Slater, also known as the human flash drive. He straight up smuggled British factory designs in his brain and brought them to America, since Great Britain wasn't exactly in the mood to share their tech secrets. Soon, manufacturing towns popped up around these new textile mills. Young single women flocked to them, literally, to work jobs that offered more independence than farm life or domestic service. These mill girls became the backbone of early American industry. Pretty soon, clothing and shoemaking industries followed the same path. Out with hand sewing, in with machines. And this was just the beginning of America's industrial rise. Up next, how this revolution picked up serious steam after the Civil War, like full-on glow-up mode. After the Civil War, the US didn't just industrialize, it hit fast forward. A tech boom brought inventions like the light bulb and the telephone, which totally changed how people lived, worked, and even stayed up past sunset. Meanwhile, railroads crisscrossed the country like the original Wi-Fi network, connecting cities, moving people, and turning small towns into booming factory hubs almost overnight. Then came the rise of the corporations. Small companies got tired of playing small and merged into mega businesses. To fund it all, they sold stocks, tiny pieces of ownership, to stockholders, who got a cut of the profits without being on the hook for the company's debts. Basically, big money with less risk. But here's the catch. While corporate owners made bank, workers were stuck with low wages and long hours. The rich got richer and everyone else didn't. Industrialization was now global. And yeah, that had some pretty massive consequences. Industrialization wasn't just a British or American thing, it went worldwide. But in Europe, things got off to a rocky start. The French Revolution and Napoleonic Wars totally threw off the groove. Trade got blocked, communication broke down, and inflation made everything more expensive. Belgium was the first to bounce back. With rich natural resources and some help from British workers who smuggled in secret machine plans, like literal tech pirates, Belgium became Europe's industrial trendsetter. Germany followed next, and by the mid-1800s, it was using its own natural resources and expanding railroads to power up both factories and its military. Meanwhile, in Asia, Japan said, "Bet." During the Meiji era, the government went all in on modernization, building railroads, opening factories, and launching itself into the industrial age almost overnight. Now that the whole world was plugged into the industrial game, things were about to shift in a big way, especially the balance of global power. Once industrialization went global, the effects hit hard. And not just in factories. The wealth gap exploded. Countries that industrialized, like Britain, the US, and later Japan, surged ahead economically, while much of Africa and Asia stayed locked into agriculture. The rich got richer, and the rest were left behind. That's where imperialism kicks in. Industrial nations needed cheap raw materials and new places to sell their stuff, so they started taking over less powerful countries. Europe, the US, and Japan weren't just building factories anymore, they were building empires. Meanwhile, back home, the top 10% were stacking coins, controlling around 80% of the wealth. But not everyone stayed quiet. A growing middle class started demanding more rights, stronger democracy, and actual social reform. In short, the revolution wasn't over. It just went political. We've seen the rise, the spread, and the impact. Time for one last recap before you tackle the ultimate brain flex bonus question. Let's run it back one time. The Industrial Revolution transformed everything: where people lived, how they worked, and who had power. Cities grew fast. Factories took over. And kids were fixing machines instead of playing tag. Working conditions? Rough. Living conditions? Worse. But over time, people organized, wages improved, and the middle class started flexing some serious influence. This wasn't just a Britain thing. It spread to the US, Europe, and Japan, changing global economies and driving imperialism. And while the rich kept stacking wealth, the working class and reformers began fighting for a more balanced society. Now comes the real test. How well can you apply what you just learned? Time to level up. Here's your bonus question. How did industrialization both help and hurt different social classes? Think about who benefited, like middle-class merchants, factory owners, and skilled workers, and who got stuck with low wages, harsh conditions, and zero job security. Use real examples. Child labor in factories, the rise of wealthy industrialists, overcrowded cities, and growing class tensions. And don't stop there. Connect it to the big picture. How did steam engines power empires? How did industrialization change global power and daily life? Drop your answer in the comments and back it up with solid evidence. And don't forget, add your name for that bonus point. Mr. Michael's watching, probably while sipping tea like a proper industrialist.